Now I'm going to show you how to use the Moxie Jam Story Framework to add components to game objects. And I'm using the simple project now and not the full sample project because I want to do things from scratch. I want to show you how to make game objects and not use pre-existing game objects. So I'm going to show you how to do this. So in this simple scene, we still have some things, and we can see here in this project view that we have some catalogs or some folders for backgrounds, items, objects, prefacts, scenes, and more. And we have in the background folder, we just have one background. In the items folder, we have one example of an inventory item. In the objects folder, we have some example graphics. So that's what's in the scene right now. In the scenes folder, we have 3 scenes. The startup scene that we don't touch. We have the start menu where we just can choose to start a game. And we have the game scene. And we're going to work with the game scene now. So I'm going to double click it to open it. This is the game scene. And it's currently having some objects inside of it. Some game objects and the background with the room. I want to create some new things in this scene. I want to add some objects and I want to make some interactivity in this scene. So I will start with adding some sprites to my folders. So I have some sprites to work with. So I already have some graphics here that I want to use. I'm going to pick the thermos. I'm going to pick the photograph of the friends, the calendar. So let me copy those objects and then go to the other project, the simple that I'm working on right now that doesn't have much assets yet. I will put those into the objects folder. So I'm going to paste those 3 in here. And now I can see in the objects folder that I have added those images. And then I will start creating some game objects. And to create a new game object, you can right click in the hierarchy view. And then you will get this menu to choose things from. And we have this specific Moxie Jam menu. That's what the framework adds to the project, the option to choose game objects from this Moxie Jam menu. So first you choose Moxie Jam here, then Story Framework, and then there are some pre-made game objects that you can choose from. And I'm going to start with making a really simple object. I'm going to make this thermos into an object with description. So I'm choosing that one. So here you got your newly created object with the description. And you can right click it to rename it because maybe it's better to have like a more specific name of it. And I will call it thermos. And as you can see, yet nothing is visible here in the scene view or the game view. I'm gonna make this a little bigger. So now we have the scene view. I'm not seeing my new game object because it doesn't have a sprite yet. I haven't assigned any graphics to it. I just put my graphics in the objects folder. But I have selected this new game object, so it exists and I can see it here. And the name is shown right up here. There is a check mark saying that this game object is currently active. That's what this means. Here is a Box Collider 2D. I will soon tell you more about that. Then we have the sprite renderer component, and here's where you can assign a sprite to this object. And to do that, you can see that it says none here. Right now there is no sprite assigned to this. There are two ways of assigning sprites. Either you can drag the thermos sprite into this field, or you can click this button right here to the right. Then it will open up a lot of assets that you can choose from. And there are many assets in here, so maybe it can be hard to find, but if you scroll down a bit, then you will see your thermos. And if you double click it, it will be assigned now to your game object. So now you can see as well that it's placed right here in the middle. We want to start with moving this game object to where it's supposed to be in the scene. So I'm using this tool to move it, the move tool, and I can just drag those arrows like this and find a suitable place for the thermos. I think right here will be fine. So now we placed it here, and we can see that it has gotten some values here in the transform component for where it's at. A box collider is used to indicate where some interaction might happen. For example, when you take the mouse cursor and move it on top of this thermos, we want something to happen, right? So the box collider is what's telling you Unity where will it react to the mouse cursor, in which area will something happen. And this can be really important to do right, because otherwise things might not happen as you want them to. So to edit this area with a Box Collider 2D, you will click this little button here. And maybe it's hard to see, but you can see here that if I make it a little bigger, you can see there is a little box here, and you can make this box bigger or smaller to actually fit the size of the thermos so that the mouse cursor will make something happen when you're inside this area. So now that's done. And then we scroll down a little. And here we have a component called show description on mouse over. And that's what we wanted to do, right? We want this to show a description when we put the mouse on top of the thermos. So right now this object description is an object with description. I want to change this to what I really would like to see here. So I'm going to write something. So I added the text. A thermos, that's a little strange, but good for school trips maybe. So now I've added this, and now let's see if it works. So let's play the game. So now in the game we can see that the thermos is actually where it should be. And when I put my mouse over it, yeah, then the text that I put in the description box is shown, a thermos. That's a little strange, but good for school trips, maybe. So the thermos is a very simple game object, and it's the only thing that should happen when you put your mouse over it is that it should show some text. But there are more complex interactions to be made in this game, and I want to show you a little how that can be done. So this time I want to add a calendar to the wardrobe and also a friend photo to the wardrobe. And the friend photo should be possible to pick up to your inventory, and then drag it onto the calendar to make something happen. So let me show you how to do that. And we will start with the photo. So I'm going to make a new game object here. I'm right clicking on the hierarchy, and then I'm choosing Moxie Jam Story Framework. And this time, instead of creating an object with description, I will choose to create an interactable item. And interactable items, they have a lot of components already attached to them that can make them interactive in different ways. So I'm going to go ahead and create one of those. And here are some settings that you can make right away. So we can assign a sprite right now to it. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to choose the photo, and I can actually search for it here. So here's the photo, and it also asked me if it's possible to pick up this item, and yes, I wanted it to be able to be picked up, so let's check that box. And we also wanted it to be something that we can add to the inventory. And for things that you can put in your inventory, you have to create something called an item. That's a specific file, and that is made that because Unity needs to remember that there is something in your inventory. So I will create an inventory item right now by clicking this button. You click Samples, Moxie Jam Story Framework, the version number, Framework Assets, and then you have a folder here called Items, and that's where we're going to put it. We want to make a good file name for it. For example, we can call it photo friend, because that's what it is. And we know also that this item is connected to the photo friend game object. Yeah, I forgot to change the name of the interactable item. Of course, this also should be called the same thing, photo friend. So now we have made some settings for this interactable item, and I'm gonna go ahead and create it. So because we attached a sprite already from the beginning, we have something here now. It's the photo. And we can go ahead and put it where we want it, on the wardrobe. Let's put it here. Now I'm gonna see if the box collider for this item is good, or if I need to change it. So let me make this a little bigger so you can see. Yeah, the box collider is too big. So I'm gonna make it smaller so that it fits this photo. Like this. And then let me show you the other components here. So here is a component called persistent object. Persistent object is there to make the game remember this object, because maybe if you move between scenes, Unity needs to remember that this object exists, and it also needs to remember in what state this object exists. For example, is it visible to the player, or is it not visible to the player? Is it active or inactive? And you can check here a box that says active on start, and you will check this box if this game object is active and visible when the game starts. And in this case it is, because we want to see the friend photo from the beginning and we want to be able to interact with it. So this should be checked like this. Then we have the component for the interactable item. And we're gonna go through it so you can see. So here is the item connected to it. That's the inventory item that we created when we started this game object. And the pick up on click is already checked. But there is also something called custom description. And you can see, if I make this a little bigger, you can see that you can choose show description on click or show and or show description on mouse over. So here we can add some text for this photo. I'm gonna write a photo. Is that her friend? And then I'm going to choose when is this description going to show. And I want it to show when the user puts their mouse over this image. So I'm clicking show description on mouse over. Then you can make some specific things happen when the mouse enters, when the mouse exits, and on mouse click for this item. And I don't want anything specific to happen on mouse enter and on mouse exit, because we already have the description on mouse over, and that's enough for this item. But we want something to happen when we click this item. Since we already said to the game that we're going to pick up this item when we click it, this is already in the game, so we don't have to add anything more on mouse click right now. So I think we're actually done with this game object right now. Let's try it and see. So I'm first going to save the project, and then I'm going to run the game. So we see the room, we see the thermos here with the mouse over text. We see a photo also with a mouse over text. A photo, is that her friend? Let's see what happens if we click it. It was picked up to the inventory, but I forgot to do something. I forgot to assign a sprite to the inventory item. So let's go and do that now. Because sometimes when you click an object and you put it in your inventory, you actually want another sprite to be shown in the inventory and the exact sprite that you picked up. So you manually have to assign a sprite to the item. And we put the item here in this folder. So it's in here, it's called photo friend, and let's select it. And then we can make some settings in the inspector window. So you see the name is here, a description is good, because when you have the photo in your inventory, then you will see this description if you put your mouse over it. A photo of 2 friends. And then I will assign an icon to it. So I click this dot over here, and I want the photo friend to be the sprite that's assigned also to the inventory object. So let me run the game again. I'm gonna run it maximized instead, because it's a little easier to see. So to do this, I go into the game tab, and then I choose play maximized here. So now I'm starting the game, and now I can see the photo of the friend, and I click it, and it goes straight into my inventory. And when I have my mouse over it, I will see the text, a photo of 2 friends. So far, so good. Now I would like to make the calendar that you're supposed to drag this photo onto to make something happen. So first let us make a new game object. And I want to make this time the kind of game object that's called a drop item target. And that is because I want an item to be dropped upon it this time. So let me create one of those. And here's this time there are no settings made from the beginning. We will make all the settings in the inspector. So let's just click mark this drop item target, and we can start by renaming it. So I'm going to call this object calendar targets, because then I know it's a drop item target. And first I will add a sprite to it so that we can see it in the scene. And I'm going to choose the calendar for this. So here it is. Now I can drag it to where it's supposed to be in the scene. So right here on this wardrobe on top of the photo. And I want to have a box collider that's fitting to it. So I'm gonna make that as well, so that the full area is covered like that. Now that's done. Let's see what we have more. We have the persistent object. It should be active on start because we want the calendar to be visible and we want it to be active. And now we're going to make the settings for the drop item targets. So first, which item does this calendar want? Which object should it react to? We want it to react to the inventory item photo friend. If I click this little dot here, it will show me the items that I can choose from, and I will choose photo friend, so I double click that. And here I can put how many of the photo does this object want or require. And we only have one photo, so this one should stay here. We want to use one photo for this. And then we should actually tell the game what happens if we drag this photo to it. So let me put something here, and I do that by clicking the plus sign here. So what do we actually want when this happens? We haven't really figured out, right? So I need to make some more things before I can actually say what's going to happen here, because I don't have any object that I could change or show here. So I will get back to this. But right now we can set what description it should have on mouse over. It should be a calendar. So right now we're done with this. We have told this object which object does it require, but we haven't told it what it should do when it gets the right item. But we can still try the game and see what happens. So here's our scene. We have the photo, we have the calendar, and I can pick the photo up. And I can drag the photo to the calendar, and the photo disappears, but the calendar, nothing really happens, right? So let us put something as a result of this action. And for that, I suppose we need some other game object that could be shown when the photo is dragged upon the calendar. So let me add a new graphic. So I'm going to go into the other project and find a suitable graphic. So in the objects folder, I think I have a calendar close-up. That's a big version of the calendar. I think that could be something for us to use. Now I'll go back to the simple project. adding this calendar close-up to the objects folder. And it's here now. So when I drag the photo to the calendar, I would like to show a close-up of the calendar to point out a specific date. And I have this close-up of the calendar that I can show. And to make that into an object that can be like looked at and then that can go away again, I need to make an interactable item of that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and create an interactable item, a new game object. So here it is. And we want that one to be called calendar close-up. I'm gonna assign a sprite to it. It's the calendar close-up. And this time, this is not an item that you can pick up. You can't pick up the calendar to your inventory. So you don't have to put anything here because it's not an inventory item. So you can go ahead and click create. So now we have the calendar close-up object and we're going to move it a little upwards like this. And then let's look at this object. So we wanted to have a box collider 2D because we want to be able to click it to close it. So now the box collider is there. We have the right sprites. It's now this persistent object component. In this time we don't want this to be visible on start, so we should uncheck the active on start checkbox here. And then we go to the interactable item component. It doesn't have an item because it shouldn't be able to be picked up, but maybe we want a description. So I'll write, is that the day they're going to meet? And maybe we want a description on mouse over. This description that I wrote here, I want it to be shown when the mouse is over the calendar. It shouldn't be picked up. But when we click it, I would like it to go away again so that we can just watch it, and then when we're done we click it and it goes away. So then we need to add something here on mouse click. So I'm going to click this plus sign here. So we want to affect the same game object that we're currently working in, so to speak. And to be able to do that, we can drag this game object from the hierarchy into this field. So let's do that. So here. So when we click the mouse, we want this game object to be set to inactive. Then we have this list here. We choose game object because we want to affect the game object. And on the bottom of this list we have a function called setActive. And we want it to be inactivated. So we don't click this box because we want it to be set inactive. This might be a little hard to wrap your head around, but since the function is called setActive, if you click it, then the game object will be activated. If you don't check it, then it will be inactivated. So that's what we can do with this game object right now. We'll save the game. So let's see what happens now. The game is running. Here's the calendar, here's the photo. We can pick up the photo and we can drag it here. but nothing still happens, and we can't see the close-up of the calendar anywhere, right? So we still have some things to do. We need to tell this game object, the calendar, what should happen when the photo, when it takes the photo. So that's what's left here. We have this drop item target. It should be called calendar targets, but I suppose I forgot to save. So we're going to go back and work with this drop item target, the calendar target, because that's the game object that we need to tell what to do. So when the photo is accepted, then something should happen. And what we want to happen is that the close-up of the calendar should be visible when we drag the photo to the calendar. So I will take this game object, the calendar close-up, and I will drag it to this field. I will go into the functions, choose game object, and then I will take set active here. And this time we want to click this because we want to set the game object active. So let's see what happens now if we run the game. Let me save first. So once again, we have the calendar, we have the photo. Let's pick up the photo. Let's drag the photo to the calendar. And yes, the close-up is showing, but there is something that shouldn't be here, right? It's the calendar that's shown on top of the other game object. And then to affect this, we can use something that's called sorting layers. And we have some settings for that here in the game object. So we want this calendar close-up to be shown in the foreground. And if we click this sorting layer option here, we have a background, default, foreground, UI, and cursor. Default is like a middle layer where you can put most of your game objects if they're not supposed to be on top of each other. But if you know that something is going to be on top of something else, then you can put it in the foreground. And then this game object will be shown on top of other game objects. So let's try again. Now the calendar is shown, the calendar close-up is shown on top of the other calendar. So now we have some interaction in the game. You can click things and make things happen. And as you might have noticed, I had deleted the old game objects with the smiley face and the box that was standing on the desk because I didn't want them in the scene.